generations and generations of homes and ranches that have been devastated. People are feeling it. It's been very heavy on a lot of people's souls. And now with the impending flood, I just like to ask that people keep their faith and help one another and be good neighbors to each other and help everybody through these difficult times that we're facing. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, approval of the agenda.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Councilor Casey. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Montoya. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, next item on the agenda is public input. I have no public input today.
Thank you.
Moving on to mayor's appointments, reports, recognitions, proclamations.
I just want to spend a little bit of time and notifying the public again about the peril of flooding in the community. The city of Las Vegas continues to work very hard to make sure to mitigate, hopefully to minimize the damage that a possible flood could have in our city. I do want to let the residents know as well that if you live in a floodplain or in a flood zone, please do anything that you can to protect your property. It isn't too soon to start using sandbags and to protect your property, perhaps moving unused vehicles or equipment to higher ground that you're not using. Borrow a neighbor's yard or somebody's place to store trailers, RVs, any kind of equipment, tractors, any kind of valuables that may be subject to damage because of the flood. So again, we're taking every opportunity to inform the public and to also assure them that the city is working around the clock to make sure that the city is well taken care of during an event. We are preparing, we have prepared. The fire department is doing training to rescue people from the water. We're also doing some training this morning on the placement of sandbags, which will be distributed here shortly. There will be a distribution center that will be announced later. And then we will have the public be able to pick up sandbags and protect their property. The city will also be going door to door, knocking on doors in the floodplain areas, in the flood zones, and handing people a notice, letting them know that they are at peril and that there's a big risk of flooding. The information will contain education on the use of sandbags. It'll also have education on the use of emergency alerts and how to receive emergency alerts. It will also give people several numbers to call and all the education that is needed it'll be a nice little resource flyer for people that are in the flood areas. So we can expect that to happen early next week. The city manager and Maria are working hard to produce that flyer, and it should be ready for distribution. Then we will utilize the fire department, the police department, code enforcement, and other staff to knock on doors to present this notice to our residents. So as we go to sleep tonight, we know that there's a flash flood warning for this area. And again, it doesn't have to be raining in Las Vegas for us to get a flood. It takes all the rain up in the mountains that we may not even know about that may be happening that will wash that river and the debris down. So pay attention to not only the skies, but pay attention to emergency alerts, weather information, and be prepared for the worst and pray for the best. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, moving on to councilors' reports.
Councilors?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank City Manager Maestas and Street Department Supervisor Arnold Lopez for addressing an issue at Keys Park. I received a text from a constituent saying that when they were watching their grandchildren play a game there, as they drove out, they accidentally drove into a huge pothole, and the woman was slightly injured, and the car, the suspension in the car is kind of out of whack right now. And so that has been fixed. I sent a copy of the text to the city manager, and it was fixed by the next day. They did call and say thank you to everybody, and they were very grateful for that. Also, in reading some of the comments on Facebook, people are really concerned about the disrepair in some of the parks, and they would like to see them fixed now that it's summertime, and they want to spend time enjoying it with their children and families. There is an ad hoc marketing committee, and I will be meeting, made up of business people in the community, and I will be meeting with them on Friday. And I would like to, if possible, invite our new community development director to meet with us so that she can get to start to meet the people that she will be working with and get ideas as to what their concerns are and how she may plan to address them as she starts working here next week. Also, the lodger's tax board is not functioning because they can't ever get a quorum. And so I've requested for next week to put on the agenda the approval of a lodger's tax expenditure for two Lamar billboards on both sides of town. And that will be presented next week also, but I wanted you to know that that's coming up. And the Lodgers Tax Board is advisory, so we don't necessarily need to have a recommendation from them. We can do that as a council. I also had a request that people be allowed to speak at a council meeting regarding the animal shelter issue, and I requested that either Mr. Maestas or Chief Salazar do a brief presentation on that in order to give people an opportunity to discuss their concerns. The people that made the request are not members of the AWC. They are independent constituents who are very concerned about what's happening. And so hopefully we can have people feel that they have input in what's going on. And, just an update as to what has happened and where we plan to go, working with other entities or whatever it happens to be. Just something brief, but to give them the opportunity to speak. And the last issue is I had someone send me a text today saying, why doesn't the city have a public information officer? And I think that that is a position that we really need. And I think that you, Mr. Mayor, have done an admirable job of trying to keep up with radio and TV and newspaper and other entities to let people know what's going on in the community. But not everybody has internet, not everybody listens to the radio, and people want to know what's going on. So maybe if we could consider that sometime soon, that would be very beneficial, I think. Thank you. And congratulations to Councilor Montoya for his daughter Laura winning the primary election for state treasurer. I think that's pretty awesome.
Thank you very much. Big victory. Any other councilors?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Montoya?
I too, I don't want to make this political, but I do just want to thank my daughter for her accomplishments, and I want to thank the citizens in the 31 counties that supported her out of the 33. Thanks to you all. On another subject, I will be bringing, and the attorney and our city manager is working on an ordinance for the parking in our city parks, because we do have some RVs and other vehicles that are being parked overnight or long-term parking in our city parks, and we need to address those kind of issues because citizens are starting to complain about that. So they will be working on that to see what we can come up with, because code enforcement and our police department has to deal with those kind of complaints. And I think that we need to revamp that ordinance, so more likely that ordinance will be coming to us for amendments in the near future. And also, I just want to thank all the citizens of Las Vegas for having patience with us in the county and for assisting everyone in the fires and everybody that's been affected. There's been tons and tons of assistance from different cities, from different backgrounds, other states and so forth, that have donated to our citizens. I think everyone here has been involved in one way or another, assisting, whether with food or donations or with assisting with help and so forth. And I think it's, everyone came together on this crisis, and I am happy to be a part of that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councilors?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Miller.
No, I mean, just kudos to, I know, utilities and Public Works Department. They're being very proactive in cleaning under the bridges. I know Maria's working on the Mills Avenue. Do I got it right? Mills Avenue, and then Public Works is working on the Bridge Street. Doing all they can in preparation of this flood when it does come. So just kudos to them again, for going above and beyond, and also to Arnold and Public Works. I think they started today mill and overlay on some streets. Eventually, I know I have a couple in my ward and others in other wards. So again, we're moving forward. Although constituents some of you guys might not think that we are. There's a lot of roads to be done here in the next couple of weeks. So just kudos for being proactive and continue to move forward despite those that criticize what we're doing up here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, approval of minutes for May 18th, 2022.
So more, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Olivari. Roll call, please.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. Moving on to business items. Our first is to conduct a public hearing for business items 1 and 2.
Oh, a city manager's report?
Sorry, did I miss? Was it not on?
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's
Mr.
okay.
Mayor, City Manager's report. We have Leo Maestas.
Before you get going, Leo, I'd like to recognize a former city council member who's in the gallery tonight, Mr. Gene Romero. Welcome, Mr. Romero.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Maestas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll keep it as brief as possible. I know we had a meeting on Friday. So as a lot of the councilors said, we do have a lot of projects that are getting kicked off this week, continuing with other projects that we've been working on, as well as the mitigation efforts that we've been working on. Like Councilor Romero mentioned, Ms. Gilberry's water and gas departments are tackling the upstream and downstream sides of Mills Avenue, and then they will move over to help DOT on the South Grand Bridge. Public Works is tackling Bridge Street, north and south side. I was going to show some images, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Bridge Street, and then move on to Independence as well. Like Mayor mentioned, we are working on information campaign to give out to the residents that are affected in the floodplain. Again, we want to let the citizens know that this isn't a typical flood. So we have a lot of arroyos that come off the Crestone Ridge that come into the city. Those are not in threat of potential flooding because there's not burn scar in those areas. So our potential threat is coming mainly down the river. So we've been working with all the water users, the Sequias, the Story Lake Users Association, to figure out what's the best management of these flood waters while still trying to keep as much good, clean water in the lake as possible. We met with state water engineer today. We made a decision to open both of the gates to try to take some of the energy out of the potential flood that we could see this afternoon from rains that could happen. So some of the water goes to the lake, some of the water comes down the river. As we move forward past storms like this, we'll have time to reassess, did that work, did that not work, and figure out something better with all the partners at the table. Again, we went and opened some of the gates to the Story Lake diversion this afternoon because previous our thought was let's save all the water that's in the lake. Today we wanted to open it to take some of that energy. We don't want to put any homes at risk. We don't want to put our water at risk. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard spot. So we've been balancing that. Maybe Maria can come up and give some information as to what we've been doing as far as putting structures into the river up the canyon on our property versus private property that would obviously benefit the city of Las Vegas and its water supply and all our structures. Ms. Maria, would you like to join us?
Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, we have been working with the Army Corps, and we did meet with them the other day, and they're on an expedited path, and it's awesome. They had the contractor, the pre-qualified contractor, meet with Army Corps to take a look at their 60% plans. And there were some changes that the contractors recommended. There were some changes that the city asked to be looked into. And with the concepts would be gabions, diversion structures, fencing, different structures added into the rivers, as well as the inlets that come into the river off the area up by the diversion that has burned, as well as some structures over the piping that we have up there in the canyon to protect and keep the pipe area from eroding. So there are several different projects that are going to go out to the contractor for installation, and they expect to have a contract with the contractor, I believe, by the end of this week, even though they're not finished with the plans. The plans were at 60%. They're reviewing them based on contractor and city input. We will get those updated plans. They still have to go to DC, but these are going to the different entities that are approving it, and they're getting turned around really rapidly. So I believe the estimate right now is they should be able to give a notice to proceed within a week or two. And the contractors are already prepared to start working as quick as possible. The only thing that would impact it is the ability to acquire the materials off the shelf. But they're already reaching out to the vendors that provide those types of materials. And some of them, like the project that Hermit's Peak Watershed Alliance is working on, is using natural materials. So it's using trees. And the city does have, I thought we had more, but it's about 100 trees sitting up at solid waste. And then I'm going to be meeting with U.S. Forestry, State Forestry this weekend, or Friday, to talk with a contractor about doing some contour fouling on city property. So along with the contour fouling,
What is that?
So that is taking trees down. A lot of these trees have burned, but they're still pretty sturdy structures. They'll take down strategic trees, and they will lay them on the ground and embed them into the ground to help slow down some of the erosion, and also be able to potentially collect some of the debris that might be coming down from the hillsides.
Gotcha.
And it also takes the tree down so it doesn't become a potential hazard. And that is actually something that they recommend to a lot of people to do with their trees. You don't take all the trees down, you take strategic trees down to help control erosion. So multiple projects that are going on right now in a very short period of time. We're getting these things rolling. So we'll have some contour fouling, we'll have some additional structures installed up in the diversion area to protect the city's infrastructure. That's where we're working right now.
Thank you, Maria, for all your work.
And
Yeah.
Mayor and council, some of these processes with Army Corps of Engineers take months to do, and we're doing them in days. And that's not only us, but they're expediting their process because they know the potential flooding that we're expected to see. So they're trying to get it done for us really quick, so.
The city's received tremendous assistance from Army Corps and from other entities as well.
Mr. Mayor. So Maria, so on the diversion for Story Lake, is that a risk there for it to break away in a flood?
Without being a structural engineer, I could say that there's always a possibility, but it depends on the power of the flood. Based on 2013, it did hold back over 3,000 CFS, an estimate of 3,000 CFS. That's what the Army Corps report shows. I went back and I read the 2013 Army Corps report from that flood, and it was 3,600 CFS. We are potentially expecting more than that with one of the big floods. It's not going to be the one, it's not going to be the rain tonight, but that is what we're expecting as our target. But as the city manager said, we're going to be learning a lot of lessons as we go through this. Each time we have some rain, each time we're looking at the weather reports. So to answer your question specifically, I can't say if it'll hold up or not. If the flow is powerful enough to take out that structure, it's probably not going to withstand anything else. That's a pretty dense structure, even though it's an old structure.
And I've been asked by citizens, especially in the flood zone areas around the Beach Street area and Mills Avenue, where do they obtain the sandbags today?
So the city is working with the county right now, because the county is producing some sandbags, and the city will be provided some sandbags.
So the county has been working along with us, coordinating with National Guard and Youth Corps to produce the sandbags. So what we're trying to do is have one hub location at the county yard. Obviously, we're going to have some citizens that are not capable of carrying their own, so we're going to have to make special accommodations for them. But I would say as early as Monday, those would be available. There's already a small amount available, but we have to coordinate all the logistics to have somebody there to help load, bobcats, all that kind of stuff. But there is some already produced that we can hand out if they're really in dire need. But that'll be part of the messaging that we're giving to the residents as we go through the floodplain. We really want to target those people that are known flood areas.
And if I might also that the solution for some of these flood areas is not going to be the same for everybody. There may be situations where sandbags are enough. There's going to be a lot of structures where the sandbags will not be enough, and the property owners need to start looking at berming their properties, berming around their houses, because there won't be enough sandbags for some of the homes that are directly on the river.
I know there's a lot of questions of where we're going to use Jersey barriers. We've coordinated with DOT. They've stockpiled Jersey barriers here. We're putting in a request for DOT to get us Jersey barriers on top of the quantity that we have. But Jersey barriers don't waterproof your property, right? They're a diversion for debris to get in there. So the water's still going to go past the Jersey barrier. So really the science of how to use a sandbag properly in your doorways and basement entries and windows, low-lying windows and garage entrances is really ideally what you need to learn. If you have floodwaters in the house, we've gotten calls in the past, I need sandbags, my house is flooding, it's already too late. So we need to get ahead of that and get those sandbags to the residents.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate your work.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Leo?
I think the last thing I wanted to quickly brief on is the topic of the animal sheltering. We're working with the county to do a collaborative effort to run the shelter, and we'll have more information next week for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I guess I just need to make this public comment is that at the end of the day, AWC did not submit a proposal. It wasn't that the city chased them, the city fired them. The RFP was put out, as it is every 4 years, as they've done in the past, in 2016 and I think 2012 when they first got it or something like that. So it's not the first time, they've gone through this RFP. I know I got some emails that said we're making them run through hoops. There's no other hoops besides what they've done before. Is there a little more maybe the language was interpreted into certain things. Was it gonna become a kill shelter? That was never the case. I think what the contract did was put a little bit of burden on the AWC as to give a plan to the city as to how long you're gonna, find a home for the animals, or what the plan was. I mean, of course, again, it was interpreted wrong in my opinion, but I guess the main comment here is AWC decided to not put in for the RFP, and now all we could do is find alternative ways on, at the end of the day, the city, us sitting up here, the administration has never been anti-animal or anti-pet friendly. At the end of the day, there's some accountability issues that I believe were some things that needed to happen, and all we could do is proceed and make sure that the animals and animal control is taken care of, and that's what we'll do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Mayor, our business items, the first one is to conduct a public hearing for business items 1 and 2. For the record, I did not receive any written comments that will be read into the record for either of those items. Moving on to items, excuse me. Did we want to go into a public hearing before we start the?
I'll entertain a motion to go into a public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into a public hearing to discuss possible approval or disapproval of the ordinance amending the zoning map from R1 to C3.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Councilor Casey. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes, and that would be for item 1 and 2?
Items 1 and 2.
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Casey, a second by Councilor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
City Attorney, would you like to swear those that will be speaking on items 1 and 2?
At the same time? I, please state your name,
I, Cassandra Vasquez,
affirm under penalty of perjury,
affirm under penalty of perjury,
that my testimony before the council tonight
testimony before council tonight
will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
will be the truth and nothing but the truth. Mr. Mayor, business item number 1 is approval to adopt ordinance number 22-04, an ordinance amending the City of Las Vegas official zoning map from an R1, which is a single-family residential zone, to a C3, a neighborhood commercial zone for property located east of 1822 7th Street, Las Vegas, New Mexico, as requested by Mr. Eugene Romero on behalf of Northgate Self Storage LLC. We have our planning and zoning coordinator, Maria Perea, and Mr. Eugene Romero.
Welcome, Maria. Welcome, Mr. Romero.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Romero.
I just want to, in all, ethics and honesty, I just want to note for the record that Eugene Romero is my cousin, and in this item, there is no financial interest or anything in my order, but just to disclose that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, this is just a presentation that Mr. Romero submitted, an application to change that property right behind 1822 7th Street, which he has his business at, Northgate Sales, and to change it from an R1 single-family residential zone to a C1 neighborhood commercial zone, not a C3. It was, I'm not
That
sure.
was a mistake.
Huh?
So it's not C3?
It's not a general commercial, it's a C1 neighborhood commercial.
Okay.
I might have done the ordinance.
We'll make that change.
I put C3, but it's a C1 neighborhood commercial on the ordinance. And he wants to expand his business of Northgate Sales from the 2 properties he has to this next one right up there. And with that, I hand it over to Mr. Romero, and he can explain a little bit more.
Why would we need the change?
Because it's an R1 right now, and R1 doesn't allow that.
And allow what?
Storage sheds.
So you want to put more storage sheds?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not storage cells, it'd be for more storage facility.
Okay.
What I'm wanting to do is expand my storage facility. I purchased the property several years ago from a person that wasn't going to use it. I guess it was actually zoned residential so that they could build homes around the golf course. It actually falls into the city master plan and spot zoning and removing spot zoning because all of that area currently is commercial. There's very little left of residential in that area. To follow the procedure correctly, of course, I came before the Planning and Zoning Board and then today before you guys to explain what I'm wanting to do. I'm bringing in 36 units to put onto the property. The property's already been leveled. The drainage has been addressed with what's currently there. The units would be actually shipping containers that are actually designed for storage. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Romero, thank you and welcome aboard. I haven't seen you since the
been a
last
while,
time, 20
Councilman.
years, I know.
Yes, sir.
Since we served together. My question is, so this piece of property is adjoined to the other one that you already have the storage at?
That is correct, sir.
And that property is located behind the Big O Tire?
It's actually located behind La Fiesta Restaurant, behind Big O Tire, and behind the building where the smoke shop is.
So where's the entrance at?
The entrance is on the driveway through the smoke shop.
To the smoke shop?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Big O Tire is no longer owned by me.
Oh, okay. And that's an easement or is that your property?
No, it's my property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And,
So it actually would be attached to the current property. Access to the new facility or the addition to the facility would be through the same entrance for security purposes. And there's plenty of drive there and plenty of parking for what businesses are located there. And the building that's actually where the smoke shop is actually my building also.
okay. And Maria, do you see any objections or anything that we need to know about as far as anything that doesn't comply with?
No, they complied, their site plan complies with the regulations for the C1.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And we had no complaints at all. Everybody was for it in the P&Z meeting that attended. We had very positive.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Or do we can go back
Number
into?
two.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh,
yeah.
you want to go to
Yeah.
number 2?
And
Okay.
then we'll go back and
Oh, and then vote on
go
both?
to the ordinance.
Okay,
All right.
never mind.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I brought this ordinance number 2203 back on May 11th for Mayor and Council's consideration to opt into the local regular election in the county. And at that meeting, it was brought to you for publication only. So we published the ordinance, it's on the website. We met the publication requirements. So I'm bringing it today for your consideration to adopt the ordinance. And what this ordinance does is it opts us into the county's, excuse me, to the county's election, which happens in November. Currently, we have our elections on even years in March. So the council during that time decided to choose the option to extend it for their time frame for 21, it would be 21 months additional. So in other words, instead of having our election in March of 2024, we would now have the election November of 2025, and the new elected officials would take office on January 1st of 2026. So it's about a total of 21 months, extending that. And that's the option that you chose as a council to publish. So now I'm bringing it for consideration for adoption, and I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Romero?
Cassandra, could you, for the record, what's the cost that we will be, what's the savings that we will see for every election that is held by opting into this?
So the state law is we pay to the county, we would pay $250 per million of expenditures of the general fund. So that more or less, depending on the year, but that comes out right around 13,000 is what we had figured. So more or less.
And how much is it for a regular election that we host?
We are paying 30,000. So it's cost savings, and like Councilor Romero said, it will increase voter turnout as well as maximize resources. So, and just for the record, I spoke to the county clerk, and she is hopeful that we will pass this and she can get us on board with her election.
And Mr. Mayor, and one other comment. Again, this is something that other municipalities, I think we were one of the few that didn't do it.
Yes, Council.
And also, at the time, the school boards, when this first came out in
2018.
2018, the school boards opted to do the same thing. They increased their terms. So what we're doing here is nothing that hasn't been done already. I want to make sure that that's very clear, because I know we're going to have individuals, criticize that. All we're doing is opting into where we can increase voter turnout, and at the same time, a savings to the cities. I just want to make that clear that we're not doing anything that hasn't been done. Both Las Vegas City Schools and West Las Vegas opted, and they extended their terms when they were, obviously they've been doing it, I think they've had 2 elections since they opted in, so, all we're doing is falling in line, and we'll have our school boards, our Luna boards, Acequia boards, all those will all be unified in one election. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarifications. On here, it says that assessment, annual assessment of $250 would be given to the Secretary of State, not to the county.
I'm sorry, yes, the Secretary of
Yes.
State.
Okay. And how many millions do we spend out of the general fund each
You
year?
would have to ask the finance
Yeah.
director that question, but when we figured it out, when this first came out, it was right around, we were looking at figuring on all of the different cities, and ours came out to right around 13,000.
15,000,
13.
15 million. 13 million.
13,000.
13,000.
Well,
The cost to
the
the city
cost,
would be
okay.
13,000.
Our share.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to return to regular session.
There's a motion on the floor to enter regular session. Second? Second
Mr.
by
Mayor.
Councilor,
Jason.
I'm sorry, Mays. By Councilor Casey.
I'll be changing my name.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Romero, second by Councilor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Montoya,
I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve item number 1, approval of ordinance number 22-04.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya, second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Casey.
I move that we approve the adoption of ordinance number 22-03, amending the Code of City of Las Vegas elections.
You want to second that?
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Councilor Casey, second by Councilor Romero. Roll call, please.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Casey, a second by Councilor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Have a good night.
Can I add something just after the fact here on the election one? It is also going to save an awful lot of women hours, I'll say, preparing for the election, doing early votes and all of that. I think that should really be the job of the county clerk, not the city clerk and her staff, and so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
That's an additional savings for
Yeah, it
labor-wise,
is.
so.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, Geraldine was really happy we were gonna do this, so, wonderful. Next order, please.
Mr. Mayor, item number 3, request approval of resolution number 22-27. This is authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase a 21 12th Street property for the city. We have Mr. Leo Maestas, our city manager.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. I was given direction some time ago to seek out the price on this property as a potential location for additional parking, which would add to our utilities on 12th Street. We have communicated with the realtor. We've come to some numbers there. I don't know, do they have it? So we wanted to see if you would allow us, maybe a roof of negotiation. The original posting price, I believe, was $136 on the property. Obviously, we wouldn't keep the property in its current state. We would go ahead and demolish the building, remove all the debris, and then obviously pave it and put a fence around it. But we wanted to bring it to your attention again that we've been communicating with the realtor and see where would you like to go from here.
I have a question. What is it gonna cost the city to,
Improve it?
tear it down, improve it, parking, and how many parking spaces are we talking about? Is it gonna increase it by 50 spaces, 10, 12? I mean, I think those are the issues that I had about this. I passed by that property, I just didn't know where, how much it was gonna cost the city, not only by the purchase, but also by improving it, and if we have that money in our budget to do so.
Right. So it would probably be looking at $75,000 to $100,000 to improve the property between the demolition, removing of the rubble, and the improvements to the property. So we'd probably be in it close to $225,000, $250,000 if that was the case.
Mr. Mayor.
That's a lot of money for that property. Go ahead.
It's been 2 years now that I've been in office this last term. And our 5-year plan and our 20-year plan, our master plan indicates, and organizations indicate, and business owners downtown indicate, and city staff indicate that we don't have enough parking downtown. And we obtained a little bit of parking over on Moreno this year because of the property that we took over. We also have parking loaned out to us from the Our Lady of Sorrows Church on Valencia. And we also have some property behind Indigo Theater that's for parking purposes that belongs to the city of Las Vegas. Now, I for one saw this property as being in a high traffic location where it would benefit parking for the river walk and the Vegas River Park, and also when we have activities downtown. It also could serve for additional parking for our utilities department. I think parking is vital in all those areas. Right now, one of our businesses on 12th Street, Skillet, is always on Friday and Saturday nights is really busy. And if you go by there, you can see that there's traffic parked, cars are parked, right alongside from 12th Street and Bridge Street over to Douglas. So, I think that there's a need for parking in all that area. I think that, a lot of people are increasingly using the river walk. I'm seeing probably between 40 and 50 people a day utilizing that. And I think parking in that area is vital for the city of Las Vegas. And yeah, it's going to take a little bit more money to throw down the building and demolish it. And I'm thinking like maybe $70,000 or so. But in the long run, I think it's vital property for us to utilize. And there is fundings in our economic development department that we can utilize for that already, that we haven't utilized. And I would be in support of purchasing it for the city of Las Vegas before somebody else jumps on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Casey, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Maestas, who owns the property?
That would be the Montoyas.
First name?
Leo's Glass.
Yes, the previous, the
Okay.
owners to Leo's Glass. It was their father that owned the property. so.
Okay, and you stated just a few minutes ago that the property would be used for additional parking for utilities and that it would be fenced off. So what is it going to be? Is it going to be used for utilities and fenced off? Or is it going to be used for general parking for the public?
We would have the ability of closing the gates at any moment, but it would have a fence around it where we can leave the gates open to the public if they needed access to it at any point. There is a fence that's going to be being replaced at utilities, Maria?
Counselor, if I might, Mayor, if I might.
Sure, go ahead.
A few years ago, we started with a project to turn the utilities parking lot into a multi-use. One would be for utilities during the work hours, but for the public in the evening. So we're gonna take down the fencing that makes it look like a prison and turn it into something a little bit more city municipal oriented. And that fencing would be expanded around this property, so we would be able to use it for city employees during the daytime. It would be opened. The only time we would close it off is if there's a security reason or an event reason that we would need to isolate. And other than that, we would, the ability would be able to leave it open at all hours. And we did increase the lighting there for this very reason.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
The
Mayor.
parking area that's, well, between the 821 and the river, whose parking is that?
That's the city's parking lot,
That's-
yes, sir.
right.
The ultimate plan with the Riverwalk was to access that parking lot adjacent to the Riverwalk walkway. So we're working on an easement with the property owner because there's some property discrepancies there. Working on a access easement through there, and then ultimately there'd be a gate through that area. Because then you wouldn't have parking in that gravelled parking lot at that point.
What? I guess, I'm sorry, Mr. Romero.
No, I guess my next question was, budget-wise right now, I mean, we have the funding, or, I mean,
There was a line item in the previous budget. Obviously, we're going to be into a new budget year in 2 weeks, but there was a line item set aside for purchases like this, yes.
if that came out of the,
It was in
Okay.
economic development. I couldn't tell you what it was put in there because that was before I came as to what it was identified for.
Why wouldn't the city use that money to improve what's already there? Like the property that's there directly close to the bridge, that whole parking area to the Riverwalk that looks like,
A portion of that property is not ours. That's the main reason why. So, and then the design of the Riverwalk goes through most of that gravelled area, so there wouldn't be parking in there after we continue with the Riverwalk improvements.
And there's already some monies appropriated for that through the Guidance River project. The thing is, with this property, will alleviate business owners parking in front of their businesses and taking the customers' parking, and they're within walking distance to their businesses.
they don't even use the Valencia parking lot for that.
No.
All the shop owners park on Bridge Street. That Valencia parking lot is always underutilized. And the shop owners still park in front of their stores. Very few do I know that park a block or two away. I doubt that people will park there and walk to the skillet. They're gonna wanna park closer to the building, as everyone does. I don't, just in my opinion, in looking at the property closer yesterday, for the money, $250,000, that could be utilized on public spaces or parks or improving current parking lots that we already have that aren't so well, like reinvest in the parking structure on Valencia, make it nicer with lighting and trees and stuff, and put a couple of other, I don't know. I just didn't see the value of that property. But knowing that it's gonna cost $250,000, that's a lot of money.
And I think, Mr. Mayor, I know we had, and I know Councilor Montoya had brought this up, and I think when we had kind of gave direction at the time was to kind of get a price, but me too, I see it with the cost kind of being, I think, not justifiable at this time. If it was cheaper, then maybe, but I mean, that's just my opinion right now, but my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other discussion? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, whether it dies or not,
Okay.
to request approval for resolution number 22-27 in support of giving direction to the city manager to proceed with this purchase of 821 12th Street property in the city of Las Vegas to benefit citizens and our visitors. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya. Second, please. The motion dies. Next order of business.
Moving on to item number 4, request approval to renew the Chief of Police professional service contract. Mr. Mayor, that is your item.
Thank you. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir, Mr. Romero.
I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session for limited personnel matters 10-15-1H2 of the MNC. Open Meetings Act. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to go into a
And
closed session
More specific, to discuss the contract.
to discuss personnel matters. There's a motion on the floor. Second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, second by Counselor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor, I make a motion to return to regular session after being in executive session for personnel matters, NMSA 1978-10-15-1H2, for the reasons of the police chief's contract.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, second by Councilor Casey. Councilor Mays. Roll call, please.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Romero, a second by Councilor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to back to item number 4.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the renewal of the contract for our Chief of Police, Antonio Salazar.
Thank you. There's a
Second.
motion on the floor, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Olivari. Roll call, please.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Casey?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Casey, a second by Councilor Olivari. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. When is your year up, Mr.? Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
When were you appointed as chief?
What is it? August 2nd,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Thank you. That's it? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion on the floor by Councilor Casey, second please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Olivari. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries.